Hello all, it's week 5. We spent last week reading about entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and the culture of entrepreneurship at Michigan State. This week we're going to explore social and cultural entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is often associated with and anchored to for-profit activities. Social and cultural entrepreneurship, however, has to do not only with making money, but with making the world a better place. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about social and cultural entrepreneurship, share some examples, introduce our week 5 materials, and importantly, provide an overview of Creativity Quest 2. Some scholars differentiate social and cultural entrepreneurship by describing social entrepreneurship as using business practices to work on solutions for social problems. Cultural entrepreneurship is using business practices to make social change, changing the way people think and act. I like to think also of cultural entrepreneurship as the act of leveraging arts and culture to enhance an area economically. And I'll talk about both social and cultural entrepreneurship here. Let's talk about social entrepreneurship first. Pravin Vise, a professor at the Guru Nanak Institute of Engineering and Technology, distinguishes social entrepreneurship from capital or business entrepreneurship. He describes social entrepreneurship as focusing on trying to make the world a better place to live in, focusing more on the greater good, engaging in projects that may or may not generate value in the form of monetary income, investing a lot of time and energy in changing society, and finding gaps in creating ventures to serve underserved markets. In this context, profit isn't the key driving motive or purpose, and profit isn't typically wealth, but is social and environmental capital. The Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship offers a definition of social entrepreneurship, but more important and interestingly, I think, they offer a list of characteristics. The Schwab Foundation claims that social entrepreneurs are people who achieve large-scale, systemic, and sustainable social change through a new invention, a different approach, a more rigorous application of known technologies or strategies, or a combination of these. But one of the things I hope you take from this class and from the work we're doing is that not all change has to be large scale. Entre and intrapreneurs also engage in small, potent gestures that can have big ripple effects. But Schwab argues that social entrepreneurs aim for big change. They also argue that social entrepreneurs focus on the social and or ecological value creation of a project. Financial value matters, but the social and ecological come first. Social entrepreneurs innovate by finding a new product, a new service, or a new approach to a social problem. They continuously refine and adapt approaches in response to feedback. They're innovative, act sustainably, think constantly about reach, and aim for social impact above any other priority. And social entrepreneurs combine the characteristics represented by Richard Branson and Mother Teresa. Richard Branson's key characteristics are that he's determined, and if you've ever read a biography about him, you see that. He's passionate and engaged in what he does. He perseveres when problems arise. He has personality. He's extroverted, agreeable, conscientious, enthusiastic, and warm. He's flexible in his approaches. Remember the hometown invasion tour from week 2 when Bugsy Rocker spent a year driving to and staying with different families in all 50 states? A couple of you posted a great question to Packback, which was, if you could interview one person about their creativity and innovation, who would it be? For Bugsy Rocker, aka Justin Saylor, that person was Richard Branson. One of his post-invasion dreams was to have a beer with Branson. So he launched a website called beerwithbranson.com and a campaign to connect with Branson. He called it in part a big Twitter experiment. Justin was curious about how social media can potentially connect anybody in the world. And in 2014, Branson was in Grand Rapids, Michigan to speak to an economic council. Justin set up a table in the hallway where Branson had to pass through before speaking with 2 glasses and a beer, and he had his beer with Branson. Another person that the Schwab Foundation argued embodied the characteristics of social entrepreneurship was Mother Teresa, remembered and cherished as a person who was caring and selfless, strong, incisive, and persuasive. She spoke up for others and was idealistic in nature but pragmatic in action. Someone who combines some of these traits and is often pointed to as an example of social entrepreneurship is Blake Mycoskie, the founder and chief shoe giver of Tom's. Mycoskie was stunned when he found out that many people, especially in developing countries, lack shoes. He met a woman who worked with a volunteer group that held shoe drives in the U.S. to collect and send shoes to people in need. And eventually Mycoskie formed and built Tom's, which calls itself a one-for-one company. When you buy a product is donated to someone in need. You'll read about Mycoskie's story in this week's readings and also about another social entrepreneur, Mohammed Yunus. So that gives you a sense of how social entrepreneurs are situated and what sorts of social entrepreneurial organizations are out there. A more slippery concept is that of cultural entrepreneurship. There's a lot more research on social entrepreneurship than cultural entrepreneurship. I mentioned earlier, I think of cultural entrepreneurship as ways of leveraging arts and culture to enhance an area economically. And here's an interesting example. A few years ago, Sweden became the first country to adopt a typeface. Most countries, as an NPR story about Sweden noted, have a national flag, anthem, and bird. These things serve to help anchor the country's unique cultural identity. But more and more countries have turned toward the business practice of branding and using it to culturally brand their unique aspects and elements. This is a really interesting example of a business practice being put to work in terms of cultural entrepreneurship. And in this context, the entire culture or country is the entrepreneurial initiative. Most countries want to attract businesses, artists, and national recognition. Sweden has adopted a particularly smart strategy for anchoring its world identity. Along with a specific font face, Sweden has also adopted a color scheme. And this color scheme and typography is for use on their websites, press releases, tourism brochures, and more. If Sweden succeeds, when people see these two colors together or they see this particular font, people should immediately think Sweden. They will have culturally anchored their brand. Companies are really good at branding, but arts and cultural industries typically aren't. Communities and cities can embrace their cultural industries to anchor identity. And a great example of this is Grand Rapids, which is world known for its renowned International Art Prize competition. Grand Rapids has leveraged Art Prize to anchor its cultural identity. Art Prize is, as the organizers describe it, a radically open, independently organized international art competition. For 19 days every fall, 3 square miles of downtown Grand Rapids become an open playing field where anyone can find a voice in the conversation about what art is and why it matters. In addition, there are exhibits throughout the entire city. The public vote grand prize winner in the artwork that tied for the Jurors Grand Prize in 2014 was Ania Quanam Aga's piece called Intersection. Aga described her goals with the project as inviting viewers to confront the contradictory nature of all intersections and boundaries. She invited us to consider the binaries of public and private, light and shadow, static and dynamic, and she talked about the piece being influenced by exclusion, as a woman not having access to the space of community and creativity of the mosque. The 2017 winner of the $200,000 Jurors Grand Prize was Seitu Jones's Heartside Community Meal. More than 250 people ate a meal together. The purpose of the meal, as Jones described it, was threefold: to remind us of food rituals as absolutely inherently culturally anchored, but also shared. Food, Jones argued, exposes our differences and inequities, illuminates our similarities and connections, and builds bridges of understanding between us. And finally, the meal was just part of the experience. The people who participated engaged in discussions of healthy food access. Overall, Seitu Jones's goal was to meet across cultures and to make people more aware of healthy food access. Art Prize 10 just happened this past October in Grand Rapids. It serves to anchor the city as a cultural capital, and it brings together hundreds of thousands of people around public art. It's a great example of a city and a community engaged in cultural entrepreneurship. Our first reading for week 5 is a chapter by Blake Mycoskie where he talks about starting Toms. The second reading is by Muhammad Yunus, who describes the social business concept. Our first creativity case is a Forbes article spotlighting 30 social entrepreneurs. Take a look through the list, maybe read a little bit more deeply about those that catch your eye. Our second creativity case for this week is This Bar Saves Lives, a socially devoted company launched by an MSU alum. We'll look at the company's website and read an article about the founder. Finally, we have 2 sparks for this week. One is Google's commitment statement website. Most people wouldn't necessarily label Google as a social entrepreneurial initiative, but I would argue they're a richly socially engaged company and are innovative and creative across their products and work paths. You'll get a sense of their commitment to the public good and social good on their commitment website. The second spark is Write a House Detroit, which is a fantastic example of cultural entrepreneurship. Essentially, the organization buys and rehabs houses in Detroit and then holds an essay contest. The winner of the essay contest gets the house and is expected to live and write and do readings in Detroit to enhance Detroit's cultural capital. I want to introduce Creativity Quest 2, which is due just before spring break, by noon on Saturday, March 2nd. For Creativity Quest 2, we're going to collaboratively build a shared creativity map. You're each going to identify a creative space on campus, East Lansing, Lansing, or the surrounding area. These creative spaces might be spaces where creativity is on display, in the architecture or in the artwork. These might be spaces that inspire creativity due to the surroundings or the lighting or the resources available. They might be spaces where you can engage in creative practice and make things, or they might be spaces that stifle and crush creativity. Everyone is going to add 1 entry to a shared Google map linked from our D2L course. Please take some time to carefully read over the Creativity Quest 2 assignment saved on D2L. You can also find an overview video of how to add your entry to our shared map. So our week 5 focus is on cultural and social entrepreneurship and how people leverage entrepreneurial thinking to engage in creative, innovative work that makes for social and cultural change. Spend some time with our readings, cases, and sparks, post a question and 2 responses on Packback, and find some time to look over the Creativity Quest 2 assignment.